Welcome to this conversation with Bethany House fiction author Rebekah Millet. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Sharpe, and I am a fiction acquisitions editor at Bethany House Publishers. I'm very excited that you're all here today because we have Rebekah Millet, who is the author of the super adorable, super funny romantic comedy, Julia Monroe Begins Again. It releases October 24th. And I'm super excited to talk to Rebekah today a little bit about the book. First, Rebekah, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. So I have been born and raised in the suburbs of New Orleans, and it's a wonderful place to grow up with all the different traditions and the culture and everything we have down here. Let's see what else. I have been married for about 21 years now, which seems crazy. I've got 2 kids, and I've just been loving this whole process of having a debut book come out and working with y'all. It's just been a real dream come true.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about the book, because this is your first book. This is your debut novel. So tell us a bit about it.
It is. So, of course, it's about Julia Monroe, who lives in New Orleans, and she just turned 40. So for all of us women who are in our fabulous 40s, we can all relate to Julia with the different things that she's going through, like her first mammogram and dealing with muffin tops and parents that are older. And in Julia's case, an older parent who is very cranky. But one of the things that readers will discover very quickly about Julia is that she is an avid risk avoider because 10 years ago, her husband died in the blink of an eye, leaving her a widow with 2 small children. But those children are now grown up and they have moved out of state. They're attending college. And so Julia finds this extra time on her hands. And so she decides, I'm going to use that extra time to help better her small business, which is cleaning houses for a living. And so, but then her ex from 20 years ago, Samuel Reed, who pummeled her heart in college, he returns to town and he joins her church, and he's determined to win her back. And despite that magnetism still pulling, she wants absolutely nothing to do with him. And but her meddling best friend gets involved, and that's where the story just kind of takes off from there.
The story, excuse me, is super fun, and I like that you mentioned that he joins her church, because in the book, like the lead line on the back of the book, I just want to read this real quick because it totally fits. It says, "Samuel was back. It seemed unfair to be blindsided, and in church no less. Shouldn't there be a commandment about that? Thou shalt not step foot inside thy ex's place of worship." Like, this is just such a great quote from the book, because the whole thing is like that. It's just witty and it's funny, and there are so many great jokes. Just as a reader, I laughed the whole way through it.
Oh, yeah.
It is. It's so fun. Okay, so the standard question that every author gets is, how did you know you wanted to write a book?
Oh, my goodness. So I'm new to all these interview things because I'm a debut author. So it's kind of a newer question for me. But I would say after I had my second kid, I discovered that there were good books out there. I think the forced high school reading we had really turned me off to reading. And I didn't think that there were fun, interesting books out there, but lo and behold, there are. And so after becoming a reader in my early 30s, I said, well, I want to write a book. Like, there's some great stuff out there. I want to give it a try. And so I told my husband, and, bless his heart, he didn't give me a crazy look like, what? He was like, no, you should write a book. And so he actually went out the next day and bought me a laptop and came home. He was like, here you go, write your book. And so I proceeded to write the worst book in the world. Everything.
First book.
I know, but it was so embarrassing. And I broke all the things you're not supposed to do. I did. I was, it was just horrible. So anyway, so then I realized how bad my writing was because I started submitting for contests and started getting the same feedback from the judges. Like, work on this, work on this. And I was like, okay, I've got a ways to go. So I started learning the craft, and that's, I think, a lot of things that new writers don't understand is it's a craft. It's just like learning anything else. Mm-hmm. You have to learn it and practice at it. And so I did that. And eventually I started querying agents, and that was a process, and some rejections in there, but also a great learning experience on ways to keep improving, because they would give feedback, which was wonderful. And so I just kept at it year after year and finally landed an agent. And then he started shopping my manuscripts around to different publishers. And so that's how I kind of got my foot in the door.
Well, it worked. How long do you feel like that process took from kind of realizing you needed to actually work on this craft to getting that offer letter?
So I started writing in 2010. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how much longer it was that I got my agent and he started submitting me, but I do remember it was, oh goodness, what year are we in now? 23?
Yes.
22? It was on my, I think it was my second book that he had on submission to publishers. And that's when God dropped the story into my heart for writing a 40-year-old romance. And I was just like, oh, no, I'm not seeing that out there. Like it seemed like a crazy thing to do. But he kept pressing me about it, about writing a romance with a 40-year-old heroine. And mm-hmm. So I talked to some of my friends and I was like, have y'all seen a 40-year-old romance in traditional publishing for inspirational romance? And they were like, no. And so I was like, well, what if I wrote one? And they were like, yes, do it. But they're so encouraging and everything. It's like, But so I was like, oh, I was still unsure about it. And but God kept pressing me about it. Mm. And so I said, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll write a rough outline and some sample chapters just to see how it feels. And so I did that, and it felt so wonderful to write this story and to write a character that was 40 and going through things that I was going through with, being a little older and but writing it in a funny way, And so I was like, okay, I've done that, kind of got it out my system. And so I went back to writing something else, and God just kept like tapping me on the shoulder about it. And I was like, Lord, you're being relentless with this. So I said, okay, I'll submit it for a contest to get anonymous feedback from judges to mm-hmm. see if they shun me on, a 40-year-old romance or if they love it. And so I submitted it for a contest and just decided to wait and see what the feedback would be on that. And then in the meantime, I went to a virtual writers conference, and mm-hmm. I scored one of those coveted editor appointments. Yeah. And it happened to be with Ray Lashane here, who was mm-hmm. the acquisitions editor at the time for y'all. Yeah. And when you have those editor appointments, you get to submit a one sheet, which is like a marketing flyer for the book you're pitching. And so I felt pretty dirty about doing it, but I did a one sheet for the 40-year-old romance and I submitted it. And so when it came time for the appointment, I didn't pitch anything because that book wasn't done. Yeah. And Rayla already had another one of my manuscripts. And so I just used that 10 minutes just to kind of pick her brain and talk about things. And so we went through that meeting, and thankfully I didn't embarrass myself during that 10 minutes. It's a miracle. But so then a few days later, she reached out to me and she said, I looked at your one sheet, and I was like, oh no, And it turned out that she was a finalist judge in that contest that I submitted those sample chapters to. And so it reminded her of that. And she was like, I'm interested in this story. And I was just like, are you serious? So from there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
No, I think having the older character is really what made this stand out, I think, for us. Like, I remember Rayla having me read it when she got like the original proposal, and I was just like, the voice is so vibrant. And then having the older character, it's not like a 24-year-old, a youth or something. It just felt so fresh and fun. And so it was, it's kind of really what makes it stand out. Because there's so many of us that are just like in this stage of life, and it's like, yes, this is what it's like to be out there on the market at, that age. I got married late. I got married at 38. And so you're dating in your late 30s, and it's a totally different ballgame than it is when you're 25. And so it's fun to just like have a book that reflects this. And that's really what I think we all loved about it, for sure, along with, of course, the hilarity.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet to hear. I had no idea, on the back end that you were reading it that early on too. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Let's see. What is our next question? So writing a book is not easy. Everyone, I don't know, maybe people don't know that, but it's not. Writing a book is very difficult and very kind of lonely. So what kind of challenges did you face writing this?
I don't really think I had a lot of challenges. Right at the very beginning, Hurricane Ida was hitting us. And so I guess my biggest challenge was right at the beginning. We didn't have power for like a week. And I was charging my laptop with a generator.
Oh, wow.
So that I could, so I could write, because that was at the very beginning of the contract. And I was like, I need to get this book written. And so I would say that was really the only obstacle that I had.
Well, you had to wait quite a while, it sounds like, to get that contract. So, that counts for something, the patience and the perseverance. The hurricanes are not something we have to worry about up here in Minnesota. That's for sure.
No, but you have those crazy snowstorms. Oh gosh.
No, but I guess we know how to deal with it. So maybe it's the same. Like, you're kind of like, oh, it's a hurricane. Okay. Like, we know what to do. So maybe that's all. Everybody has their own natural disasters that they're just like, we got this. So the setting for this book, it's set in New Orleans, which is also where you live. And the setting is almost a character in the story as well. Like, you really just take us around the city, and like we get a sense of the food and the culture. And was that always the plan, to kind of set the book where you grew up and where you love, or would it just kind of happen?
No, it was the plan for sure, because I had a contract and I had a book that hadn't been written yet. So, so I was like, as far as not cheating, as far as having to research somewhere different, but I was just like, well, this will be perfect, to set it here in New Orleans, because I know the area and the traditions, and I hadn't really read other books set here, inspirational romance. So I thought, well, this would be something, really neat to do. And I'd had, other friends that also encouraged me, in the same way, that they hadn't seen the New Orleans setting, and that it would be a lot of fun to experience.
Yeah, agreed. I think that was another thing that I loved, was just like, yes, let's do New Orleans. Like, it has such a romantic, reputation. I know, like, it kind of has, like, with Mardi Gras, it's a little more party town, but it just feels like the jazz and the architecture and the history, and New Orleans just has kind of its own mystique. So I kind of want to shift over to talking about characters and like where the characters came from. So some of you may or may not be able to see this, but Samuel has an eye patch. He's super sweet hero, but he's also wears an eye patch. So can you talk a little bit about Samuel and like where he came from?
Yeah. So, oh goodness. So the eye patch for Samuel, and this is the first time I've ever really told anybody about it. I love watching those home improvement shows. I get sucked into them, and I can't remember the name of the show right now, but I'm sure everybody will know. But they had, it was a married couple, and they're doing home renovations, and one of the, I say side characters, but one of the other people that was helping them, he wore an eye patch. And I found it very interesting and different, and then later on in the show, he shared his story about how that happened. And so I just thought, I haven't read about a character with an eye patch yet. So, I think I'll, make Samuel, miss an eye. So, so that's how that came about. And then as far as like his background, he's a retired Green Beret. Mm-hmm. And so with Julia's story and his backstory, and I'm not going to spoil it. Y'all got to go read the book to find out what happens. But him being a Green Beret just played, it was a way for me to kind of get rid of him for a while in Julia's life. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you read the book, it'll make sense, because in becoming a Green Beret, it's a lot of training and a lot of time away from home and overseas. And so therefore, Julia moves on with her life while he moves on with his life in another direction. And so that's how that came about.
We love Samuel. He's very swoony. So how did he evolve at all in the writing of the story, or the editing the editing process?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm glad that he did. So I know you'll remember this, Jessica, because so for the first draft that I turned in, I had Samuel. He was a little, I don't want to say pushy, but pushy is the word that comes to mind, because he was just really determined to win Julia back. And that's one of the things that I was so grateful for when I got that editorial memo from you, was to work on softening him so that he doesn't seem so pushy. And so I'm just eternally grateful for y'all for making that suggestion, because the Samuel in the book is just, it's exactly, who he needs to be.
Yeah. He turned out really well. Like, it's the perfect mix of, my intentions are clear. Like, I'm going to win you back, but I'm going to do it in such a way that I'm just going to be here for you and support you and like do everything that I can to like prove to you that I'm not going to disappear again.
Right. Yeah. Very respectful.
So, yes.
Yeah.
No, it's always interesting how kind of books and characters can evolve like through the editing process. And overall, this book actually didn't change that much, because you did such a great job with it on the front end. But Samuel is one piece that I think evolved a little bit. One of my favorite characters, and this isn't really a question, I just kind of want to know where she came from. Julia's mother cracks me up. She's this cranky-pants, like, curmudgeon, and you don't usually see that as like a female character. They're always kind of old men, and she's kind of like, instead, this like curmudgeonly old woman. And I just really want to know where she came from, because she delights me.
I don't know where she came from, but I will say that her voice and her chain smoking, it came from a character. It was influenced by a character in Young Sheldon. I don't know if you've seen that TV show. Well, she's the church secretary, and she is like cranky and chain smoking, and her voice is, and she's just call it like it is. And so like, that's where the inspiration for her came behind was that character. And I just wanted it to be someone who was just said it like it is and didn't care. And
and she's like wily too. Like, she's always like up to something. Like, she just is.
Yes, her war with the neighbor, her little escapades. Those were a lot of fun to write. Since this was your first book, what surprised you about the publishing process? Like, I'm sure going to conferences and talking to other authors, you had a general sense, but like, what surprised you about the whole process of getting this book out? I was surprised by just how much y'all do on your end and all the different departments. Like, I'd start getting an email from this department or this person. And it was just, and then y'all are also keeping me updated. Like, all these things are going on in the background and I'd have no idea. And then I'd get an email, well, this is what's happening. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like, there is so much going on y'all's end that I had no idea about. That was very eye-opening. And just all the things I've learned has just been incredible. I think maybe the most thing I think that I'm most surprised about maybe would be how much you didn't really alter the book. Like, other than, like helping me with Samuel for sure and all that. But when I first started writing, it was a question I'd asked was like, do I need to write with a filter, or can I just kind of go at it? And y'all were like, no, write however you want to write. Your writer voice. And then, if we need to kind of tame some things, we will. But y'all didn't tame anything. So when I'm kind of surprised that y'all let me get away with everything that I kind of got away with.
No, I think that just speaks to like just like the strength of the voice. Like a lot of you're using first person narration in the book, which a lot of contemporary romance does. But I see a lot of authors when they're writing in first person, like it kind of gets away from them. They go on these rabbit trails, like kind of like they hit the joke too hard and they keep hitting it and it kind of loses it's like explaining the joke almost. Mm-hmm. And you didn't really have that issue very much. Like you were pretty like it felt like you kind of stayed rabbit trailed a little bit every now and then, but usually it was worth it. Or, we could pull that out, no big deal. But like for the most part, it didn't feel like your first person narration was just rambling. Like a lot of them it almost seems like they're rambling, and yours always felt like it was on task. And so that was, kudos to you for that, because it can be easy to let that voice get away from you.
I was always worried about pacing and word count. So if I ever thought about I was like, no, let's just keep it tight, as tight as I can.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, that's always what we're telling you. Like, tighter is always better. We're always cutting things, sadly. No, cut it out. Let's see. The title and the cover for this. I love the cover on this book. And the title is different from your original working title. Like, do you remember what that was?
Yes, it was Beignets for One.
Which is also super cute.
Yeah, it was. And so, because the first thing I got in the process was the title. So that was the first thing that came to me. And I just remember getting the email and I was just like, I was kind of a little confused because you're so used to seeing it as the working title for like a year, Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then like, it just kept sinking in more and more. And I just loved it. Like after the initial shock, I loved it. It was perfect. I love how y'all came up with it.
Yeah.
Y'all are like brilliant with the marketing side of things.
That was another Rayla Shane Hare stroke of genius, was Julia Monroe Begins Again. We always have, we have titling meetings where we all kind of get in a room together. We've been brainstorming on our own, and then we come with like our lists. And everybody really liked Beignets for One. Like, it's so cute. We're like, should it be Beignets for Two though? Because it's a romance. And so there was kind of some talk. Yeah. And then Rayla just had this random idea about Julia Monroe Begins Again. And it was kind of the same for us. It was like the more we kind of sat with it, it was like, no, this feels really good. Like it kind of fits what's in the market. Like you connect with her right away. You can kind of like immediately you have that emotional connection to Julia, because we've all had to begin again at some point. And so the Beignets for One became Beignets for Two, and then that became your series title instead. Yeah. So we still got to keep it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love all of it.
So, and the cover as well is super cute. We really like how that turned out. Was that kind of what you were expecting, or did you think it was going to go a different direction?
It wasn't what I expected at all, but in the best way possible. I don't know, because I got to fill out the questionnaire that y'all sent, which was so much fun to do. And I'm so grateful that you let me like give some feedback, things that I like about covers, things I don't like. And so I didn't really have any expectations in my mind. But when I got it, I was just like, I loved it. I love how the title is kind of the main feature, but then you get the little snippets of the characters. And so, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it turned out super cute. I'm very pleased with it. Like, I know I'm biased, but like, I'm just like, oh, we did a good job.
Y'all did a great job. And that's what everyone tells me, like, oh, they love the cover. It gives the feel, the feel for the story. So I love it.
It does fit really well. So the book goes on sale in October. And so as your first book, like it'll be kind of the first time your book's out in stores, readers picking it up. What do you hope that readers take away from reading this book or kind of receive from the book, from the story? I hope
they get the same thing that I get as a reader. Like when I read inspirational romance, that's why it's my favorite genre, because you're left feeling uplifted and encouraged, and it's guilt-free reading. I love it. So I hope that readers who read this will, that they'll laugh, that they'll be encouraged, and that they'll just be uplifted, when they finish it.
Right. What are you working on next?
So I'm working on book 2 in the series, and that is going to be Julia's best friend, Kate. It's going to be her story. She gets to step into the spotlight and have a little romance herself.
Well, that will be fun. Kate is Julia's rock, so it will be fun to get to see her have her own story.
Yes.
That's almost all that we have today. I only have one final question, which is kind of our general wrap-up question for you. And so that is, what have you read lately that you've loved? We like to share our book recommendations with everyone.
Oh my goodness. What have I read lately that I loved? Well, I just finished about a week ago Denise Hunter's latest release, Wildflower Falls.
Okay.
That was really great. And I'm looking forward to, I have the book here with me. It's Sarah Monzon's Christmas book. Also Loving Christmas. So I'm looking forward to that one. So yeah.
Nice. Well, this has been super fun for me. I was very glad that you were able to be here. Hopefully everybody else enjoyed listening to us as well. Yeah, it's great. I'm super excited about this book. Congrats on your first release.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rebekah. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
This conversation was a production of Bethany House Publishers, a division of Baker Publishing Group. Music Bossy Boots by Shane Ivers at silvermansound.com. For at least 30% off plus free shipping on Julia Monroe Begins Again by Rebekah Millet, visit bakerbookhouse.com.
And I think this is the only place where purple, green, and gold match. It's down here in New Orleans, where you can get away with wearing the every Mardi Gras without fail. You will see people pull out once a year. They pull out these hideous purple, green, and gold striped shirts and proudly wear them.
Excellent. I love it.